Welcome to Forgotten History Daily. I am William, and tonight we journey into one of history's most fascinating and darkest stories. It's a tale that will make your blood run cold, a story that will leave you wondering how such an atrocity could have occurred in the heart of America. And the most shocking part, the Philadelphia police dropped a bomb on a black neighborhood, killing 11 innocent people, including 5 children, and burning down 65 homes. It's May 13th, 1985, and the city is in chaos as the Mauve bombing unfolds live on national television. Panicked residents flee their homes as flames engulf the entire block of Cobbs Creek Avenue. The stench of smoke and fire fills the air as families are torn apart, their lives reduced to ashes in a matter of minutes. This was no accident. It was an act of calculated violence. For months, tensions had been building between the Philadelphia Police Department and the radical black nationalist group, Mauve. Founded by John Africa in 1972, Mauve had become increasingly notorious for its violent rhetoric and actions against law enforcement. But was this a genuine threat to public safety, or a convenient excuse for a police crackdown? As we delve into this forgotten chapter of American history, questions will be raised about the systemic failures that led to such devastating consequences. How did it come to this? What events and decisions can lead one of America's greatest cities down this path of destruction? Tonight, on Forgotten History Daily, we shine a light on a dark corner of American experience. We'll speak with those who lived through the tragedy, including survivors of the bombing and their families. We'll examine the motivations behind the police action and explore the systematic flaws that enabled such brutality. Join me as we uncover the truth of the Mauve bombing, an event that would become one of America's most egregious examples of state violence against its citizens. As we relive this tragic moment, let us remember the lives lost, the families torn apart, and the enduring impact on our collective conscience. As the city of Philadelphia descended into chaos, the police were preparing to storm OV's fortified compound at 6221 Osage Avenue. The group had been occupying the house for years, and tensions had been escalating between them and the authorities. The police had attempted to evict Mauve on several occasions, but the group had refused to leave. The standoff began in April 1985, when a court order was issued to demolish the compound. However, the police were unable to execute the order due to concerns about safety. As the days turned into weeks, the situation grew more volatile. On May 12th, Mauve members clashed with police outside the compound, and several officers would. On May 13th, at around 6:00 a.m., a team of police in riot gear arrived at Osage Avenue to serve a warrant on John Africa, Mauve's leader. But instead of storming the house, they began to lay siege. The police said that they had been trying to negotiate with Africa and his followers for hours, but it was clear that they were itching for a confrontation. As the standoff continued, tensions escalated. Police snipers took up positions on nearby rooftops, and a phalanx of SWAT team members surrounded the compound. At around 9:00 a.m., a bomb-laden police helicopter swooped in above the house, dropping a massive explosive device onto the roof of the compound. The blast was cataclysmic. Fire upper story of the house came crashing down, and a massive fireball erupted from the building. Flames engulfed the surrounding homes, quickly spreading to nearby houses as residents scrambled for their lives. Panic set in as people ran through the streets, desperate to escape the inferno. It was like a war zone, said Donna Washington, who lived across the street from Mauve's compound. The fire was so intense that it melted my car. I had to run through the flames to get out of there. As the city descended into chaos, emergency services struggled to cope with the scale of the disaster. Firefighters fought to contain the blaze, but their efforts were hindered by a series of mistakes and miscommunications. One of the most damning examples came when a police officer failed to notify fire crews that they were sending in explosives-laden helicopters. The decision was made by Philadelphia Police Commissioner Gregor Sambour, who had a history of clashing with MOVE. The investigation into the bombing would later reveal that Sambour and his team had deliberately misled residents about the severity of the situation. Residents had been told that it was safe to evacuate their homes, only for them to be caught in the crossfire as police launched their attack. "We knew we were playing with fire," said Philadelphia Mayor Wilson Goode, who would later apologize for the city's actions on May 13th. "But I don't think anyone expected it to escalate like this." As the news of the bombing spread, protests erupted across the city. Thousands of Philadelphians took to the streets, demanding justice and an explanation for the destruction. The aftermath of the MOVE bombing was marked by outrage and despair. 11 innocent people had been killed, including 5 children who were trapped in their beds as the bomb exploded above them. 500 residents were left homeless, forced to flee their homes in a matter of minutes. As we'll see in our next installment, the fallout from the MOVE bombing would lead to a major overhaul of Philadelphia's police department and the city's emergency services. But for many in the city, it was too little, too late. The wounds inflicted on May 13, 1985, would take decades to heal. Join us next time as we explore the aftermath of the MOVE bombing and how it changed the city of Philadelphia forever. It's a balmy May morning in 1985. The sun shining bright over the concrete jungle of Philadelphia. The city's residents are going about their daily routines, oblivious to the catastrophe that's about to unfold on Osage Avenue. For many Americans, Philadelphia is synonymous with liberty and freedom. Its iconic landmarks like Independence Hall and the Liberty Bell standing as beacons of American history. But beneath this facade of patriotism and progress lies a city with deep-seated racial tensions and social inequality. The MOVE bombing would expose the dark underbelly of America's supposed land of the free and home of the brave. As we delve into this tragic event, let's take a step back to appreciate the world that existed on May 13, 1985. In Philadelphia's predominantly black neighborhoods, life was marked by poverty, neglect, and a sense of hopelessness. The city's infrastructure was crumbling, with dilapidated housing projects like Powelton Village serving as testament to decades of disinvestment. Racial segregation remained entrenched, with African Americans often relegated to the city's periphery. It's 1985, and America is still reeling from the effects of the Vietnam War. Its society grappling with the consequences of militarism and foreign intervention. The Cold War is at its peak, with Reagan's hawkish rhetoric dominating headlines. In this charged atmosphere, tensions between law enforcement and marginalized communities are simmering just below the surface. For MOVE, a radical black liberation group, Philadelphia was a hotbed of resistance. Founded by John Africa in 1972, MOVE sought to challenge systemic racism through confrontational means. Their charismatic leader, Vincent Leifert, also known as John Africa, had built a devoted following among disillusioned young people from Philly's ghettos. MOVE's activism took many forms: demonstrations, protests, and even armed standoffs with police. Yet, despite their militant stance, MOVE members were not without compassion. They'd established community gardens and outreach programs to address poverty and hunger in Philadelphia's inner-city neighborhoods. As the MOVE conflict escalated, Philadelphia Mayor Wilson Goode, a 50-year-old Democrat elected just months prior on January 1, 1984, faced mounting pressure to quell the group. His predecessor, Bill Green, had attempted to negotiate with the MOVE, but ultimately failed to resolve the impasse. Now, as May 13th dawns over Philadelphia, it's clear that Goode has taken a more aggressive stance against the group. Tensions have been simmering for weeks. On April 22nd, police launched a raid on MOVE's compound, only to be met with fierce resistance from John Africa and his followers. In the days leading up to the bombing, Osage Avenue becomes a war zone of sorts. Police reinforcements arrive, cordoning off streets and surrounding the compound with SWAT team members. Snipers take positions on rooftops, surveying their quarry below. Residents are told it's all part of a carefully managed police operation. Little do they know the true nature of events unfolding before them. Philadelphia is not unlike many other American cities facing similar social unrest in 1985. Los Angeles' Rodney King beating would still be 6 months away, but its echoes can already be felt on Osage Avenue. As we delve deeper into this tragic episode, it becomes clear that Philadelphia was no exception to the pattern of racial tension and police brutality sweeping across America. Now, let's follow Donna Washington as she recounts her harrowing experience of living through the MOVE bombing. A resident of Penn Village, just blocks away from the compound, Donna remembers that fateful day with precision. It was like a war zone. The fire was so intense, it melted my car. I had to run through flames to get out. Washington's account serves as a poignant reminder of the human cost of police brutality and systematic racism in America. It's a stark contrast to the grandiose declarations of liberty and freedom associated with this nation. In the aftermath, protests erupt across Philadelphia, drawing thousands into the streets. Anger and outrage turn towards City Hall, demanding justice for MOVE and accountability from Mayor Good and his administration. The people demand answers. How could this happen in their city? What drove the police to such extreme measures? The investigation that follows would expose a litany of mistakes and miscommunications, including the fateful decision to use explosive-laden helicopters without warning residents or emergency services. It's an episode that would leave deep scars on Philadelphia, but also spark a long overdue conversations about racial inequality and police accountability. The world may never know what could have been done differently that day, but we can take solace in the lessons learned from this tragedy, a reminder of America's capacity for both good and evil. Join us next time as we continue our exploration into the aftermath of the MOVE bombing and its lasting impact on Philadelphia, an event that would forever change the fabric of American society. As the investigation into the MOVE bombing began, it became clear that the Philadelphia Police Department had a long history of targeting the African American community. The department's tactics were often heavy-handed and discriminatory, with many residents feeling that they were living under siege. The police had been monitoring MOVE for years, but their approach was marked by a lack of understanding and empathy. In 1978, just 7 years before the bombing, police had launched a series of raids on MOVE's homes in West Philadelphia. The raids were sparked by a minor traffic altercation involving a MOVE member, but they quickly escalated into violent confrontations with residents. The police used tear gas, beatings, and other forms of intimidation to try and silence MOVE. The MOVE bombing was the culmination of decades of systematic racism and police brutality in Philadelphia. It was not just an isolated incident, but rather a symptom of a deeper problem that was festering for years. As the city began to rebuild after the bombing, residents came together to demand justice and accountability from their government. Protests erupted across Philadelphia, with thousands of people marching through the streets demanding answers. The chants of justice for MOVE echoed off the buildings as activists held signs that read, "Stop police brutality." The mayor's office was flooded with calls and letters, demanding to know why the police had resorted to such. The city's media outlets were filled with stories of the bombing, but often these stories focused more on the destruction caused by MOVE rather than the harm inflicted by the police. As the investigation continued, it became clear that there had been a series of failures and miscommunications within the police department that led up to the bombing. The decision to use explosive-laden helicopters without warning residents or emergency services was seen as a reckless and irresponsible act. The people of Philadelphia were outraged by the revelations. They saw the MOVE bombing as a symbol of everything that was wrong with their city's institutions. The police department, once revered for its bravery and dedication, had been exposed as corrupt and brutal. In the months and years following the bombing, a wave of protests and activism swept through Philadelphia. Residents began to organize community groups to address issues of police brutality and inequality. They demanded that the city take concrete steps to reform its police department and hold officers accountable for their actions. The MOVE bombing had brought attention to a long-standing problem in America, the systemic racism that infected every level of society, from the streets to the corridors of power. The people of Philadelphia saw this tragedy as an opportunity to spark meaningful change, to push for policies and practices that would promote justice and equality for all. As we delve deeper into the aftermath of the MOVE bombing, we will explore the ways in which it sparked a long overdue conversation about racial inequality and police accountability. We'll talk to activists, residents, and former officials who were involved in the city's response to this tragedy. And we'll examine the lasting impact that the MOVE bombing has had on Philadelphia, an impact that can still be felt today. Join us next time as we continue our exploration of the MOVE bombing and its profound effects on American society. We will hear from those closest to the event, including survivors, family members, and community leaders, who will share their stories and insights into this pivotal moment in history. The summer of '85, a sweltering heatwave had gripped the city of Philadelphia, but amidst the warmth and long days, a sense of unease hung in the air. The year was marked by social unrest, with protests erupting across the country, demanding justice for African Americans. Little did anyone know that this particular summer would see one of the most horrific events in American history unfold on the streets of Philadelphia. Our story begins in 1978, when a group of radical activists calling themselves MOVE had moved into a small row house at 6221 Osage Avenue in West Philadelphia. The group, founded by John Africa, was known for its extreme views and militant tactics. MOVE's philosophy advocated for the rejection of mainstream society, and they took it upon themselves to create their own self-sufficient community, free from government interference. But as the years went by, tensions between MOVE and the authorities grew. In 1985, a heated dispute erupted between the police department and the residents of Osage Avenue. It all began with a complaint about a noise disturbance. The Philadelphia Police Department had received multiple reports of loud noises emanating from the MOVE house, which they believed to be caused by John Africa's incessant preaching. It was just another typical Tuesday morning in May when Officer James J.
Gallagher and his team decided to pay a visit to 6221 Osage Avenue.
Gallagher, with over 2 decades of experience under belt, had been involved in several high-profile cases. This particular day would prove to be one of the most pivotal moments in his career. Gallagher and his team arrived at the house at approximately 5:30 a.m. The officers claimed they knocked on the door, but there was no response. In a statement later released by the police department, Gallagher stated that he believed the residents had been tipped off about their arrival. MOVE members denied this, saying they were caught off guard. As tensions escalated, the standoff between the police and MOVE reached its boiling point. The officers claimed they called for backup and requested assistance from the emergency response team. However, a heated debate has continued to surround the events that transpired next. Eyewitness accounts suggest that Gallagher's team attempted to enter the house, but were met with resistance. According to some reports, MOVE members had constructed makeshift barricades to prevent entry. The situation quickly spiraled out of control as both sides engaged in a fierce standoff. With an air of foreboding hanging over the streets of Philadelphia, the city was bracing itself for the worst. Little did anyone know that this confrontation would be about to take a deadly turn. It's worth noting that in those days, the emergency response team had only recently been established. The ERT consisted of highly trained officers equipped with advanced gear and a more aggressive approach to handling high-risk situations. Some have questioned whether the introduction of such a team had inadvertently escalated tensions between the police and Merv. Back at 6221 Osage Avenue, a chilling sequence of events was about to unfold. A young police officer, who would later become infamous for his actions that day, received an order from above to clear the area. In the following hours, this fateful decision would result in catastrophic consequences. For John Africa's daughter, Delphine, was at home when the drama unfolded. She vividly recalls hearing a loud explosion coming from outside as officers attempted to breach the house. In the chaos that ensued, Delphine and her family barricaded themselves indoors, unsure of what to expect. On May 13th, at approximately 1:45 a.m., a massive explosion shook the streets of West Philadelphia. Residents described hearing a loud boom, followed by flames engulfing the move house and surrounding buildings. Panic set in as neighbors frantically called for emergencies. In the aftermath, it was clear that something had gone terribly wrong. Flames were spreading rapidly, consuming entire city blocks. Dozens of homes stood ravaged, their owners left to pick up the pieces of what remained. As fire crews fought to contain the blaze, residents from the surrounding area gathered in shock and horror, unsure of what to make of this unfolding catastrophe. Little did they know that their world was about to be forever changed by a single fateful decision made that morning. This is just the beginning of our story, one marked by human error, gross misjudgment, and ultimately, devastating loss. In our next episode, we'll delve deeper into the days following the Move bombing, examining the government's response to this tragedy and the fallout on a community still reeling from the shock waves. Join us then as we explore more of this heart-wrenching story, uncovering some of the most pivotal moments in this tragic. Until next time, thank you for tuning into Forgotten History Daily. As the sun rose on May 13, 1985, the city of Philadelphia was gripped by chaos and destruction. The flames that had engulfed the Move house and surrounding buildings continued to rage out of control, fueled by a combination of factors including high winds, dry conditions, and what would later be described as tactical error. In the hours following the bombing, residents from the surrounding area began to emerge from their homes, unsure of what they were witnessing. The sheer scale of the devastation was staggering. Over 65 homes lay in ruins, and at least 8 people had been killed, including several children. As emergency services struggled to contain the blaze, reports began to emerge of police brutality, with officers allegedly beating residents who attempted to flee their burning homes. Despite the unfolding disaster, the police department seemed reluctant to acknowledge their role in the tragedy. In a bizarre press conference held later that day, Police Commissioner Gregor J. Sambor claimed that Move had been using explosives and was a serious threat to public safety. However, eyewitness accounts would later contradict this narrative, painting a picture of a peaceful community under. As news of the bombing spread, outrage began to build in the community. Neighbors who had lived alongside the Move residents for years spoke out against the police department's actions, describing them as heavy-handed and disproportionate. Local activists and community leaders, meanwhile, a young woman named Ramona Africa stood outside the ruins of the Move house, surveying the devastation. A member of John Africa's inner circle, Ramona had been awakened by the explosion and had managed to escape with a few other residents. As she looked out upon the destruction, she knew that this was more than just a local tragedy. It was a symbol of a deeper struggle against systemic racism and police brutality. This wasn't just an attack on Merv, Ramona would later say in an interview. It was an attack on our community, on our way of life. The police thought they could just bomb us out of existence, but what they didn't realize was that we're not going anywhere. As the city struggled to come to terms with the aftermath of the bombing, A peculiar sense of unease settled over the police department. Several officers who had been involved in the operation began to speak out against their colleagues, describing how they had been ordered to clear the area and take out, move. The internal tensions would eventually lead to a series of high-profile lawsuits and investigations, exposing deep-seated corruption within the Philadelphia Police Department. In our next episode, we'll delve deeper into the government's response to the tragedy, examining the role of Mayor William Goode and the City Council in covering up the events leading up to the bombing. We'll also explore the long-term impact on the community, including the displacement events and the lasting scars left by this traumatic event. Join us then as we continue to unravel the tangled threads of history surrounding the Move bombing, a story that serves as a stark reminder of the ongoing struggles faced by marginalized communities in America today. The Move bombing of 1985 was a pivotal moment in Philadelphia's history, one that would leave an indelible mark on the city and its residents. But as we delve deeper into the aftermath of this tragedy, it becomes clear that the consequences of that fateful day went far beyond the immediate devastation. 1 month after the bombing, on August 19, 1985, a grand jury was convened to investigate the events leading up to the attack. Proceedings would be anything but straightforward, with both sides trading accusations and blame. Mayor William Goode's administration would insist that the police had acted in good faith, while members of Move and their supporters would argue that the bombing was nothing short of state-sanctioned terrorism. As the grand jury hearing progressed, it became increasingly apparent that there were more to the story than initially met the eye. A former city official, later identified as Arthur Dantley, would come forward with claims of a deliberate cover-up. According to Dantley, he had been instructed by Mayor Goode's office to soft-paddle the investigation and downplay any wrongdoing on the part of the police. What was it about the Move bombing that made the city so desperate to sweep its role in the tragedy under the rug? One key reason lay in the decades-long struggle for housing rights in Philadelphia. The city had long been plagued by poverty, racism, and disinvestment, with entire neighborhoods left to decay. The Move community, situated on a patch of land known as Cobb's Creek, was particularly emblematic of this crisis. On that fateful day in May 1978, when John Africa's followers were out of their homes, the city had effectively set the stage for the tragedy that would unfold 6 years later. By allowing the Move community to squat on the land, Philadelphia authorities had tacitly acknowledged the existence of a glaring housing shortage. Now, as the investigation into the bombing gained momentum, it became increasingly clear that there were deep-seated conflicts within the city's power structures. Long-standing tensions between Mayor Goode and Police Commissioner Gregor J. Sambor would boil over in the coming weeks, with both men engaging in a high-stakes game of blame-shifting. Meanwhile, the Move community itself was facing an existential crisis. Forced to relocate from their destroyed homes, residents were scattered across the city, many ending up in cramped and squalid conditions. Families were torn apart, and the trauma inflicted by the bombing would linger for years to come. Ramona Africa, one of the few survivors of the Move house, found herself at the forefront of this struggle. Haunted by the memories of that day, she spoke out against the city's treatment of her community. They thought they could just wipe us away, Ramona declared in an interview with a local newspaper. But we're not going anywhere. As the grand jury hearing neared its conclusion, it seemed clear that the city had more to hide than initially met the eye. The testimony of several witnesses raised questions about the police's handling of the situation and their role in perpetuating systemic racism. One such witness was a 14-year-old girl named Tammy Carter, who claimed to have seen officers firing on her family's home as they tried to flee. Her account would later be corroborated by other residents, including Ramona Africa herself. But just as it seemed that the truth might finally begin to come to light, Mayor Goode's administration pulled out all stops to discredit the witnesses and undermine the investigation. These people are simply trying to make a name for themselves. claimed one anonymous city official in an interview with the Philadelphia Inquirer. The fallout from the grand jury hearing would be far-reaching, with some of the community accusing city officials of orchestrating a deliberate cover-up. Others demanded greater transparency and accountability, pointing out that the bombing had left 65 homes destroyed and at least 8 people dead. Not to mention untold numbers forced into poverty. And as we delve deeper into this story, it's clear that the bombing was more than just an isolated incident of police brutality. It was a stark reminder of systemic racism's corrosive influence on American society. And yet, despite the trauma inflicted by this tragedy, there are lessons to be gleaned from its aftermath. In the words of Martin Luther King Jr., "Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that." The MOVE community would ultimately find a way to rebuild and heal, their spirit unbroken despite the devastation wrought by the bombing. The city's response to this tragedy remains a topic of controversy to this day, with many calling for greater accountability to city officials. One thing is clear, however: the MOVE bombing served as a stark reminder that in America, justice can often be a far cry from the truth. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, the MOVE community struggled to come to terms with the devastation they had faced. The once thriving neighborhood was now a smoldering ruin, with only a few homes remaining standing. The trauma of that fateful day still lingered, as families tried to rebuild their lives amidst the rubble. But the city's response to the disaster only added to the pain and frustration. Mayor Good's administration claimed that the bombing had been necessary to prevent further violence from the MOVE organization, but many in the community disputed this version of events. They pointed out that the police had used excessive force, and that the bombing had caused untold harm to innocent civilians. One person who would play a key role in challenging the city's narrative was Ramona Africa herself. A longtime member of the MOVE family, Africa had been in prison at the time of the bombing, but she had been released on bail just days before. She returned to Philadelphia to find her community in shambles, and her family members among the dead. Africa would go on to become a vocal advocate for justice and accountability, using her platform to expose the city's handling of the MOVE bombing. She traveled the country, sharing her story with audiences from New York to California, and eventually even meeting with President Ronald Reagan in an effort to draw attention to the case. Meanwhile, back in Philadelphia, the city's officials were scrambling to contain the fallout. The police department launched an internal investigation into the handling of the bombing, but many critics accused them of whitewashing the truth. They claimed that the report would be nothing more than a cover-up, designed to protect the officers involved and deflect blame from the city. As tensions continued to rise, the MOVE community began to organize in response. They held rallies and protests, calling for justice and accountability from the city. Some even went so far as to occupy abandoned buildings on the site of the bombing, creating a makeshift encampment that would become a symbol of resistance. The city's response was to condemn the occupation as vandalism and squatting, further inflaming tensions between the community and city officials. But for many in MOVE, this was about more than just property rights. It was about reclaiming their space and demanding justice from the system that had wronged them. One person who would play a key role in this struggle was Pam Africa, Ramona's sister, and also a member of the MOVE family. Africa would become a leading voice for the community, using her skills as an organizer and activist to mobilize support and build momentum for their cause. "We're not just fighting for justice," she would say in an interview with a local newspaper. "We're fighting for our very lives. We're fighting against a system that has consistently oppressed us, that has consistently tried to silence us and erase us." As the battle for truth and accountability raged on, it became clear that the MOVE bombing was not just a problem that spoke to the systematic racism and oppression that had haunted the country for centuries. And yet, Amidst all this darkness, there were moments of hope and resilience. Moments like the one when a young woman named Debbie Africa would return to the site of the bombing, months after it happened, and find her community rebuilding in spite of everything. I saw people working together, she remembered in an interview years later. I saw neighbours who had been enemies for years suddenly coming together to rebuild their lives and their lives. And I knew that we were going to be okay. The Move bombing would go on to become a defining moment in the city's history, a painful reminder of the deep-seated problems that still plague American society today. But it also became a testament to the power of resilience and community, as one group of people came together to support each other, even in the face of unspeakable tragedy. As we continue to grapple with these questions of justice and accountability, it's worth remembering the words of Martin Luther King Jr., spoken all those years ago. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. In the case of the Move bombing, it was this love and the community's unwavering commitment to each other that proved stronger than any bomb or any system of oppression. And it is a lesson that we would do well to remember today. As we continue to examine the Move bombing, it's essential to delve deeper into the aftermath of that fateful day in May 1985. The city of Philadelphia was still reeling from the devastating effects of the attack, with many residents struggling to come to terms with what had transpired. One of the most critical issues at play was the destruction of homes and property within the Cobbs Creek neighborhood. The bombing resulted in the complete leveling of over 60 row houses, displacing hundreds of people and leaving a significant number without access to basic necessities such as food, shelter, and medical care. As part of the response efforts, the city established a makeshift housing complex on the site where the Move homes had once stood. Dubbed Move's Memorial Site, this temporary solution aimed to provide residents with temporary accommodations while they navigated the arduous process of rebuilding their lives. However, what many listeners may not be aware of is that this memorial site was essentially a euphemism for a collection of run-down mobile homes and hastily constructed prefabricated housing units. The conditions within these units were dire, often plagued by issues with heating, plumbing, and basic amenities. Many residents reported living without access to running water or proper sanitation facilities. One resident who lived in the makeshift complex recalled the experience. It was like being trapped in a war zone. The stench of human waste and rotting food hung heavy over everything. People were living on top of each other, with little to no regard for basic hygiene. It was absolute chaos. The lack of resources and infrastructure at the memorial site was not merely a consequence of the bombing. It was a result of systemic failures that went far beyond the immediate effects of the event. According to a 1985 report by the Philadelphia Inquirer, the city had consistently failed to provide adequate support for low-income residents in need. Funding allocated for housing initiatives and community development programs was woefully inadequate, with many residents relying on makeshift solutions or existing on charity. This systemic neglect was not limited to housing. It also manifested in other areas, such as healthcare and education. Many Move residents reported having difficulty accessing medical services due to their location within the predominantly African American community. In one notable incident, a pregnant woman living at the memorial site gave birth prematurely after being denied adequate prenatal care. As we continue to explore this dark chapter in American history, it's essential to examine how these systemic failures intersected with issues of racial and socio-economic inequality. The Move bombing was, in many ways, an illustration of the consequences that arise when marginalized communities are left without support or recourse. One individual who took issue with the way the city handled the aftermath of the bombing was local activist and lawyer John Cedrasky. A vocal advocate for social justice, Cedrasky had spent years working to address issues of racial bias within the Philadelphia Police Department. The Move bombing was a catastrophic event that exposed a long-standing problem in our society, he said in an interview with a local publication. It highlighted the systemic failures and biases that continue to plague our city. The government has consistently failed to prioritize the needs of low-income residents, instead opting for short-term solutions that perpetuate inequality. Sedraska's words take on added significance given the current conversation. Many listeners may be familiar with the concept of disproportionate impact, where marginalized communities bear an unfair burden of social services or infrastructure woes. However, few might realize that this phenomenon is not merely a product of contemporary problems. It has roots in historical policies that continue to influence urban planning and resource allocation today. For instance, in the aftermath of the MOV bombing, several city officials pushed for new zoning regulations that aimed to protect predominantly African American communities from development. In reality, these zoning restrictions led to widespread displacement of residents as gentrification swept through the area. The city's attempt to prevent future incidents ultimately contributed to a decades-long cycle of disinvestment and neglect within the community. Fast forward to 2020, we see this cycle play out again in cities like Minneapolis and Portland, where long-standing social issues around policing and housing inequality have boiled over into national debates. When we look at the destruction caused by a single bomb in May 1985, it becomes clear that this event was merely a symptom of broader societal problems. The question remains, what lessons can we draw from this tragic chapter in American history? How do we address systematic issues like racism and inequality within our own communities? One crucial step forward lies in acknowledging the ways in which these issues intersect with housing, healthcare, and education, not just as individual silos, but as deeply interconnected problems that demand hope. As Martin Luther King Jr. once so eloquently phrased it, darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. In this context, light represents not merely an force for change, but a collective understanding. We must learn to shine a beacon of the darkest corners of our society and confront the uncomfortable truths about how we've allowed systemic failures to perpetuate inequality. On May 13, 1985, a sense of unease settled over the city of Philadelphia as the police department prepared for its latest confrontation with the Nuve organization. Founded in the early 1970s by John Africa, a charismatic figure who advocated for an alternative lifestyle free from modern conveniences and societal norms, Move had long been a thorn in the side of local authorities. The group's radical views on community self-sufficiency and their rejection of mainstream values had drawn them into conflict with city officials and law enforcement. In 1978, police attempted to arrest Africa and several members of the group, but they were met with resistance, leading to a fiery confrontation that left one police officer dead. In the years that followed, tensions between Nuve and the city continued to escalate. The organization had set up residence in an abandoned row house at 6221 Osage Avenue, which became a symbol of their defiant stance against mainstream society. However, for many Philadelphians, Move was seen as a nuisance, a group of eccentric radicals who refused to conform. On that fateful morning in May 1985, the police department launched Operation Safe House, a joint effort between the Philadelphia Police Department and the FBI to apprehend Africa and several members. The plan called for the use of a bomb intended to disable Move's headquarters and allow the authorities to safely arrest those inside. At 9:45 a.m., two police helicopters circled above the Move compound, dropping pyrotechnic missiles onto the roof in an attempt to flush out the occupants. The first bombs ignited a small fire, but it quickly spread due to the wooden construction of the building and the lack of water pressure in the area's hydrants. In response to the escalating situation, police dropped 4 more devices, C4 explosives, into the burning building. The resulting inferno was so intense that it engulfed adjacent houses, causing widespread destruction and leveling 65 homes. 11 members of the OV organization died in the blaze, including John Africa. The aftermath of the bombing revealed a grim reality. The city's emergency services were woefully unprepared to handle the disaster. Firefighters, who had been told to stand down as police prioritized their own operation, struggled to respond effectively due to inadequate equipment. Eyewitnesses recounted scenes of chaos and confusion as panicked residents attempted to flee their burning homes. The destruction was not limited to MERV's headquarters. An entire neighborhood had been devastated in a matter of minutes. In the months that followed, outrage and condemnation poured in from across the nation. Many called for the resignation of Mayor Wilson Goode, who had authorized the use of force against MERV. However, it would take years for accountability to be fully met, with several high-ranking officials eventually charged with crimes related to the bombing. The consequences of the MERV bombing went far beyond the immediate aftermath, however. As a wave of investigations and reforms swept through Philadelphia's government, it became clear that systemic issues had contributed to the tragedy. The city's approach to policing and emergency services was criticized for being inadequate, and the lack of community engagement in decision-making processes was exposed. The bombing also marked a turning point in American social justice movements, with many activists calling for a re-evaluation of the ways communities of color are policed and served. As we reflect on this pivotal moment in history, it's essential to recognize that systematic injustices did not begin or end with MERV, but rather they represent a symptom of deeper problems that continue to. The MERV bombing serves as a stark reminder of the delicate balance between individual freedom and collective security. In confronting such questions, we must grapple with the moral implications of our own actions and those of our institutions. The search for answers is a journey into the dark corners of American history, but one that holds immense potential for growth, healing, and transformation. As historian and activist Angela Yai Davis wrote in her book on the MERV bombing, the tragedy of May 13th, 1985 is a reminder of the need to understand the complex relationships between social movements, urban planning, and racial politics. As the full extent of the destruction became clear, 65 homes reduced to rubble, 11 members of the organization killed, a wave of protests swept across the city. The immediate response from authorities was predictable: denials and excuses. Mayor Wilson Goode, who had authorized the use of force against MERV, claimed that he had done what was necessary to protect public safety. But the people of Philadelphia knew better. They saw the smoldering ruins of their neighborhood, the traumatized residents huddled together in shelters, and the families left without homes. As the weeks turned into months, however, a more nuanced narrative began to emerge. The media, which had initially been fed a sanitized account of events by city officials, started to dig deeper. Journalists like Terry Gross, who would later win a Peabody Award for her reporting on the bombing, exposed the systemic failures that had led to the tragedy. A key moment came in October 1985, when a grand jury was convened to investigate the police actions leading up to and during the bombing. The proceedings were tense, with MERV members' families and supporters packing the room. The jurors heard damning testimony from police officers who admitted that they had been misled by their superiors about the danger posed by MERV. In December 1986, the grand jury delivered a scathing report, concluding that the bombing was an unjustified act of brutality committed by the Philadelphia Police Department. Goode and several high-ranking officials were subsequently charged with crimes related to the bombing. The trial would take years to reach its conclusion, but one thing was clear: accountability had finally begun. The MERV bombing also sparked a renewed focus on community-led initiatives to rebuild and revitalize neglected neighborhoods. Activists like Ramona Africa, who lost her home and nearly her life in the bombing, began working with residents to create community gardens, cooperatives, and other self-sufficient projects. As the years went by, the city of Philadelphia slowly came to terms with its past. In 2018, Mayor Jim Kenney officially apologized for the MOVE bombing, acknowledging the dark chapter in the city's history. The apology was a small but significant step towards justice and healing. Despite these efforts, many questions remain unanswered. Why did the police adopt such an aggressive approach to dealing with MOVE? What role did racism play in the decision-making process? How could a tragedy of this magnitude have occurred in a major American city? These questions are not merely historical curiosities. They hold vital lessons for our present and future. As we reflect on the MOVE bombing, it's clear that systematic injustices were at work. A culture of impunity among law enforcement officials, combined with the dehumanizing effect of poverty and racism, created a toxic environment in which catastrophe was inevitable. So what can we learn from this tragic event? One key takeaway is the importance of trust. The MOVE bombing showed us how easily trust can be broken, not just between individuals, but also between institutions and communities. When residents feel ignored or disrespected by their government, they are far more likely to become disengaged and disconnected. This lesson is particularly relevant today, as we grapple with issues of police reform and community relations. As activist and historian Angela Yee Davis has argued, the MOVE bombing was not just an isolated incident. It represented a symptom of deeper problems in American society. Another crucial takeaway from the MOVE story is the need for transparency and accountability in government. When officials prioritize their own interests over those of the people they serve, tragedy often follows. In this case, the police and city officials colluded to conceal the truth about the bombing, fueling a culture of denial and deception that continues to haunt us today. Lastly, the MOVE bombing serves as a stark reminder of the importance of self-sufficiency and community resilience. As we face increasingly complex social and environmental challenges, it's essential that we build strong, connected communities capable of coping with adversity. In practical terms, what can we do today to apply these lessons? First, we must prioritize building trust within our communities, between individuals, organizations, and institutions. This requires ongoing efforts to listen, engage, and empower marginalized voices. Second, we need to demand greater transparency from our government officials. We should insist on clear, accurate reporting of events and hold those in power accountable for their actions. Third, we must invest in community-led initiatives that promote self-sufficiency and resilience. This might involve supporting local cooperatives, gardens, or other projects that foster a sense of ownership and responsibility among residents. Lastly, we should remember the MOVE bombing as a reminder to always question authority and assume that institutions will act with integrity or justice. By doing so, we can build stronger, more compassionate communities capable of confronting even the darkest aspects of our collective history. The story of MOVE serves as a powerful warning about the dangers of unchecked power, corruption, and systematic injustice. But it also offers us hope, for if we listen to its lessons, we might yet create a brighter future, where trust, accountability, and community resilience become the guiding principles of American society. On May 13, 1985, the streets of West Philadelphia were quiet, except for the sound of helicopters hovering above. It was a typical Wednesday morning in the neighborhood, with children on their way to school and residents beginning their daily routines. But little did they know, a catastrophe was unfolding. At 9:45 a.m., an explosive device made of C4 explosives and thermite, a highly flammable metal alloy, was dropped by a police helicopter onto the roof of the MOV house at 6:02. The bomb, weighing over 100 pounds, contained enough force to blow through 3 stories of brick walls and ignite multiple fires simultaneously. The blast sent shrapnel flying into nearby homes, causing widespread destruction and chaos. Flames engulfed the Mauve house, spreading rapidly as residents tried to escape. 9 members of the Mauve family, including 5 children, were trapped inside. Within minutes, the entire building was in flames. Panic set in as neighbors rushed out of their own homes, unsure of what was happening or who was responsible. Some thought it was a terrorist attack. Others believed it was an accident gone wrong. The sound of sirens filled the air as firefighters and police officers rushed to the scene. However, rather than trying to put out the fires or rescue those trapped inside, the police instead began to shoot at the burning building. Tear gas canisters and bullets rained down on the Mauve house, further exacerbating the inferno. "It was like nothing I'd ever seen before," said Janine Ruffin, a neighbor who witnessed the events unfold. The police were just shooting into the house, like they were trying to kill everyone inside. As the day wore on, the fires spread, consuming homes and businesses up and down Osage Avenue. A total of 61 houses were destroyed or severely damaged, leaving hundreds of residents without a place to live. But amidst the destruction, there was also an eerie sense of calmness. Mauve members, who had been under siege for weeks by police, seemed eerily composed as they watched their home burn down around them. John Africa, the group's leader, reportedly stood on the front steps of the burning house, defiantly shouting at police to stop shooting. The aftermath of the bombing was met with a mixture of outrage and confusion. Some hailed the police for taking out a domestic terrorist threat, while others condemned their actions as genocide. A grand jury later cleared all 50 police officers involved in the operation of any wrongdoing. But the truth about what really happened on May 13, 1985, would not be fully revealed until years later. In the following weeks and months, evidence emerged that contradicted official accounts. Interviews with Mauve members and neighbors painted a picture of excessive force and police misconduct. In addition to the destruction of homes, police had also used explosive devices against unarmed residents, including children as young as 7 years old. It would take a 1995 federal investigation by the FBI's Philadelphia office to finally expose the extent of police corruption and human rights abuses in the wake of the bombing. The Mauve bombing marked a pivotal moment in American history, serving as a stark reminder of the darker aspects of our collective past. As we continue to grapple with issues of racism, policing, and community trust, it's essential that we confront this painful chapter and draw from its lessons. In part 2 of this documentary series, we'll delve deeper into the consequences of the Mauve bombing, exploring how it galvanized a new generation of social justice activists and paved the way for future movements. We'll also examine the lasting impact on West Philadelphia, where survivors continue to seek closure and justice to this day. The Mauve bombing serves as a powerful warning about the dangers of unchecked power, corruption, and systemic injustice. But by confronting its dark legacy, we can also find hope for a brighter future built on trust, accountability, and community resilience. As we conclude our exploration of the Mauve bombing, it's clear that a profound lesson emerges from this dark chapter in American history. The unmitigated use of power and the disregard for human life by those entrusted to serve and protect have devastating consequences for individuals and communities alike. In the aftermath of May 13, 1985, the people of West Philadelphia faced a daunting task: rebuilding not only their homes but also their shattered trust in institutions. The Mauve bombing exposed the seedy underbelly of systemic injustice, where those in power would stop at nothing to suppress dissent and maintain control. But amidst the ashes, a new movement began to coalesce. Activists like Mumia Abu-Jamal's wife, Wanda, and others who lost loved ones that fateful day refused to be silenced. They demanded accountability, justice, and an end to police brutality. Today, as we reflect on this painful history, we're left with a haunting question. Can the experiences of those affected by the MOVE bombing serve as a warning for our own time? In an era where Black Lives Matter protests rage across the globe, can we draw parallels between the systemic racism and police violence that led to the bombing? As you consider these questions, I urge you to share this story with someone who needs to hear it, a friend, family member, or colleague who may not be aware of this pivotal moment in American history. The power of knowledge and shared empathy can be a powerful catalyst for change. If this story opened your eyes to the darker aspects of our collective past, I encourage you to subscribe to Forgotten History Daily. Every week, we uncover the stories they don't want you to know. From forgotten battles to silenced voices, we shed light on the overlooked chapters in human history. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and never stop asking questions. The world needs people who care about its complexities and are willing to confront them head-on. As the days turned into weeks, the city of Philadelphia was forced to confront the reality of what had occurred on May 13th. The bombing had left a scar on the community, both physically and emotionally. The once thriving neighborhood of Osage Avenue was now a smoldering ruin, with 65 homes reduced to rubble. The stench of burned buildings and charred remains hung in the air, a constant reminder of the tragedy that had befallen the residents. The people of West Philadelphia were shocked, outraged, and heartbroken by the sheer scale of destruction. Many families had lost their homes, their livelihoods, and even their loved ones. The city's African American community was particularly devastated, as they had already been grappling with systemic racism, police brutality, and economic inequality for decades. As the investigation into the bombing unfolded, it became clear that the Philadelphia Police Department had been aware of the potential for violence long before the event. Internal memos and witness testimony revealed a culture of corruption, incompetence, and outright malice within the department's ranks. The police had been aware that the MOVE organization, led by John Africa, was armed and prepared to defend itself against any incursion. Despite this knowledge, the police moved forward with their plan to storm the MOVE compound without adequate backup or support. They ignored warnings from community leaders, local activists, and even some of their own officers about the dangers of confronting the group. The aftermath of the bombing was marked by a mixture of outrage, grief, and resilience. The city's African American community came together to demand justice for the victims and accountability for the perpetrators. Activists like Wanda Abu-Jamal, Mumia's wife, and other surviving family members took center stage in the public discourse. Their message was clear: we will not be silenced. We will not be ignored. They demanded that the city take responsibility for its actions, provide reparations to the families affected, and ensure that those responsible for the bombing face consequences. As the movement gained momentum, it attracted national attention and sparked a wider conversation about police brutality, systematic racism, and government accountability. The MOVE bombing had exposed the dark underbelly of American society, but it also revealed the power of collective action and resist in the face of oppression. The city's residents came together to rebuild their community, not just physically, but also emotionally. They organized food drives, fundraising campaigns, and advocacy efforts on justice for the victims. The bombing had brought out the worst in some, but it also brought out the best in others, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. As we reflect on this pivotal moment in American history, we must acknowledge both the horror of what occurred and the courage of those who rose up in response. The MOVE bombing serves as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of systematic injustice and police brutality, but it also reminds us that even in the darkest moments, there is always hope. Hope for change, hope for justice, and hope for a brighter future. The story of the MOVE bombing is not just a tragic event, it's also a testament to the power of collective action, resilience, and resistance in the face of oppression. As we move forward, it's essential that we remember this chapter in American history, and use its lessons to inform our present and shape our future. In the next episode of Forgotten History, we'll explore another pivotal moment in American history, a story that will take us from the sun-scorched fields of California to the streets of Chicago, where a group of radicals join us as we uncover more hidden chapters in human history and shed light on the stories they don't want you to know.